Next up is the Bride of Frankenstein by Moebius Models. I got this kit about 12, 13 years ago. And at the time I was going to build it, I started taking a look at the parts. And then notice right off the bat, one thing I didn't care for the model kit was the head sculpts. So these are the head sculpts of the completed model in the back. You notice a few things about the head sculpt. First off, Elsa Lanchester, who plays the bride, she's looking away from Boris Karloff. And Boris Karloff is looking down at her. When we look at the still from the movie, they're almost at eye level. And she's looking directly at him, and he's looking directly at her. So, but the head sculpt itself is something I wasn't a big fan of. I felt that the head sculpt that comes with this model doesn't exactly capture both of these actors' faces. And I wanted something relatively close to what I see in the still on the box, as well as, watching the movie itself. Because this is an important scene in the movie. It's really at the tail end. It's right before Elsa starts screaming at Boris as the bride is looking directly at the Frankenstein monster. And everything goes downhill from there. So, with that in mind, I checked around, and there are head sculpts for this model kit, and they're still available. They're available on Cult TV Man Shop. And so this is the Boris Karloff head sculpt. And this is the Elsa Lanchester head sculpt. And, comparing this to the still image on the box, very, very close. I'm very satisfied with these head sculpts. And I think it's actually going to make the model look a lot better. Couple of reasons. First off, it's a single piece. You're not playing around with gluing head parts together and removing any sort of seams. There is a little bit of a seam in the molding process on the Boris Karloff head sculpt, and the seam actually runs, the mold line actually runs up over the head, like right here, right where so it joins where his neck bolts are. That's easy enough to clean up. Now for the Elsa Lanchester head sculpt, it is it's actually very good. I didn't see any mold lines on this. So I'm very sad. I don't even think there's any cleanup involved with this one. Just a little bit with the Boris Karloff one. Now, I'm not going to go over all the parts in this model kit. There's been a couple of unboxing videos for this model kit, and they're worth watching. But I will say that a couple things that come with this model kit I thought was helpful. One is this little booklet on building the model. And what's nice about this is it gives you some ideas on what to paint the two characters as. So I was leaning in the direction of not doing a green Frankenstein. I'm not a big fan of a green Frankenstein. I'd rather do something that's a little bit closer to actual flesh color, and then add some colors there for bruising on his face, as well as some of the the patchwork that's going on in his neck and his head. And the same thing's true with Elsa. I think in the movie, her face was they probably put some sort of white makeup on her face to brighten up her face a little, which is something I may or may not end up doing. So that's one thing that I think is really helpful. And they get, like I said, in the booklet, they give you some directions on painting it too, which is helpful. Also, the instructions are laid out really, really well. I thought, anyways. I will probably end up veering a little bit away from the order of these instructions. And that's because I need to determine early on the position of the heads within the torsos. Because I'm using aftermarket parts, I want to make sure that they sit in the torso correctly, and that there's actually going to be an orientation. Again, I want to have Elsa sort of looking at the monster, and I want Boris to be looking at her as well. And So I'll have to play around with the position within the torso. A lot of times I found that when it comes to putting aftermarket heads on torsos, you end up having to make modifications to the torso to make sure that it rests properly within that torso. But that's going to be one area where I'm going to be veering a little bit on this model. Other than that, I'm really going to just show the more of the assembly and the painting than it's going to be, going over all these parts. Now, in terms of getting this model kit, at the time that I bought it, I think I paid around 40, maybe 45 bucks for this. After looking on eBay, the price seems to be trending $129 to $130 for model kit. I think I saw one up for auction, and the starting asking price was around 60 bucks. With that being said, we're coming up to the 100th anniversary of Dracula, and Frankenstein. They both came out in 1931, so that's about 5 years away. I suspect that Moebius Models will end up reissuing all these model kits in the next 5 years. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they start doing that, because they're going to want to take advantage of that 100th anniversary. So they're likely to reissue the Frankenstein model that came out, that I'll build a little bit later on. And Bride of Frankenstein came out in 1935. I suspect about the same time that they reissue, their other model kits. And I think there's a mummy for sure. There's a Frankenstein model. There's a Bride of Frankenstein, and I want to say there was one other one. I don't know if it was a Dracula or if it was a Wolfman. In any case, I think all those are going to be reissued in the next 5 years. So my advice would be to, unless you're absolutely desperate for this model, hold off and wait until they get reissued and then pay whatever that price is. And I'm kind of hoping the head sculpts are still available at that time, because that's going to be a nice addition to this model. So without much ado, let's go to assembly and painting this model. I've been putting together all the sub-assemblies. So as you can see, we got some of the figures, bodies together, arms, still waiting on hands and arm pieces for Frankenstein. I did get the bench together, and it went together fairly well. I will point out, though, that there's a seam here in the front where these two pieces come together. It would have been nice if it was either below where the buttons are or above the buttons. Interestingly enough, they avoided that problem on both the left and right side of the bench. But overall, it went together pretty well. You get some seam work to address, but it isn't that difficult to get together. The fit is perfect. And then the body is the same thing. Again, you have some seam work that you need to address on here as well. And for Frankenstein's body, pretty straightforward. I don't have the bottom half done yet. I will note that, just looking at this, you can see that his, I'm sorry I got the rubber band in the way, his pants actually go all the way down. So there's going to be a seam you'll have to address here where the coat and half the pants meet the other half. But that shouldn't be too big of a problem. Now, one thing I want to note about the model, and that is, and I'm bringing this into focus here, is this top picture here. So if you use the kit parts for the head is going to be looking straight forward. And I think that, here we go. You can see the head is looking not at Frankenstein, instead it's looking away. And this is an important scene in the movie. And what you really need to have is her head looking at Frankenstein's head. So you can see that it's looking straight at his face. And so to do this right, I think this is the advantage of having um, the resin part as opposed to the kit part. I can rotate the head. And what I did was I cut a hole in here and then I rounded out the bottom half of the head so that I could turn it. Now, I've already marked where the head needs to be. So to reproduce her look, I needed to adjust the head just slightly so that it's not looking forward. It's not looking sort of on the side away from him. It's actually going to be looking at him. And I tried this out a few times with both bodies next to each other so that I could make sure that I got the head just right. One thing I'll note about this is once I glue the head into place, I'm going to have to use a little bit of putty on the inside here so that the neck joins the top part of the body. Now, speaking of her body, so this is, let's see, this is her left side, and that looks about right in terms of the image that we see here. However, this is where we run into a problem. I'll leave the head in place, and that's with her right hand. And if I insert it in as the part is supposed to be inserted, you see that it's actually going away from the body, and that's not right. Instead, it should be closer to here, and you can see it in the image. So I'm going to need to play around with this a little bit and build out this wrapping here. And I'm not too sure how I'm going to do that just yet, but I want to get that arm closer to the body. I would say right about here is probably good enough because I can get paint into her right arm, but it needs to be about right there. I can't get it any closer. So if I can get it, about right here, I would say I'm in pretty good shape. But it means playing around with the wrapping of the top here. Now, in terms of Frankenstein's head, or the Frankenstein monster's head, again, I cut a hole there, I rounded it out, and I did a mark. So based on his appearance, you can see he's looking at her. Now, when you have the body turned, like in the image, this is where you want the head to be. So it's not straight forward. It's really to his right side and slightly turned. Right. Yeah, this is not glued into place just yet, but it needs to be slightly turned like this because she's going to be sitting on the chair like that. So again, he's looking at her and she's looking at him. So the end result is, if I can get the two together, you're going to be having them sort of like this. And you can see that they're going to be looking at each other as the still from the movie indicates. Now, I will say that when you sit her on the bench and you actually have the two turned to each other, you can see that they're now looking at each other, which is how we want it to be in the movie. Because this is an important scene from the movie. This is where she finds him repulsive and she starts screaming, and then everything goes downhill from there. So it's important that we have them looking at each other as as the scene really shows. And it's nice having this image here. I don't have to go to the actual film to rewatch it each time to see how it's supposed to be. I'm glad that they included this still because this really sets everything up. The other thing you'll want to note is that his hand is directly on her hand and his hand is underneath her hand. So he's just clamping down on her hand. I think I haven't put the parts together yet, but I'm thinking that that may not be possible. The model has his hand above her hand. So her hand's not even on his hand, and his hand is hovering above her hand. So I think when I start playing around with his arm, I'm going to try to adjust it so that her hand is really pressed down on top of his hand. I don't mind this top hand hovering above her hand, but I want her hand to be down on his hand. And again, you can see they're not looking at each other in the model. So it's important that they are looking at each other for this scene. And again, her arm is away. It's got to be closer to the body. I'm not going to be able to do it exactly onto the body, but I want it to be pretty close so that it's really matching this scene. So that's where we stand right now. When I come back, I'll show you the progress I made in terms of attaching the heads and attaching the arms as well. And that is going to be it before I start doing any painting of these figures. Okay, so I'm out in the garage right now getting ready to prime all the parts that I've assembled. And I just want to give a quick update on where we stand on putting these figures together. So right now, the feet and the hands for the Frankenstein monster are just put in place just to illustrate how that they would appear once they're glued into place. So I'll be painting them separate from the actual body. The heads are now in place, and as we can see, very similar to that movie still, she's looking directly at him, and he's sort of looking at her. So this is pretty close to that movie still. Couple things I do want to point out. If you have this model kit and you haven't assembled it yet and you're planning on using the aftermarket head parts, you will need to fill in around the necks on both of these figures with some sort of putty. Reason being is it's actually a pretty steep cavern around the necks that appear to go into where the chest area is. So just to make it look a little bit more natural, you need to fill that in. Also around the arms on the bride, that needs to get filled in as well. Now, one of the problems I always have with a figure model that's sitting is the what I call the floating feet syndrome, and that is the figure sitting down and its feet is floating above the ground or the floor or wherever it's located. And it's always annoying because it could be just a little bit of a gap, but it just doesn't look natural. So I had that problem with the bride, not with the Frankenstein monster. His feet, and I'll get the nameplate out of the way, his feet go right down to the floor. However, the bride's does not. Her gown, or I'm thinking it's a surgical gown, is actually floating a little bit above it. So what the solution I came up with, and I will get the hand out of the way here, is I ended up gluing a piece of styrene on the bottom. And you'll have to, play around with the styrene to get it about right. But I ended up using a pretty thick piece of styrene and then sanding the sides, both the back as well as this side down, just a little, just to get into place so that it's not floating on the floor. So it's pretty good. It's better than it was. It was a good size gap. The other thing I did was I used magnets. So I wanted to be able to move these figures off, and I didn't want to, permanently glue them to the seat. So I used magnets on the underside of both the figures as well as on the seat. That way, the figure will go right onto the seat. There's a really strong magnetic connection on the Frankenstein monster model, and I'm very happy with that. So that'll make it easy, especially when it comes time to place his hands on her hand as well. And as you can see, I was able to get her arm closer to her right side. It's not touching the right side like it is in the movie still, but it's a lot better than it was. I didn't like the idea of that arm sort of being out to the side here. It just didn't look natural. So this now looks a lot more natural. Um, and as I indicated earlier, you're going to need to fill in this as well, like I'm doing right now. I'm showing right now around the arm. Just put some putty in there and fill in that gap because the gown is actually touching the bandages on both areas there. Um, but overall, I'm very satisfied with how it now looks, and it's ready at the. It's now at the point where I can start priming everything. Now I left the shelving off that goes into the wall. Um, I actually have that assembled elsewhere. Um, it just won't stay in place. It's one of the few parts actually that won't stay in place. Interestingly enough, the other thing I'm noticing too, just playing around with the figures, is they're seated in the right spot, but they're actually very close to the edge on this floor. And so I had a little bit of concern if I include the nameplate here, trying to get that Frankenstein model to sit right. So I think the approach I'm probably going to take is put the paint up the nameplate, paint up the floor, and then glue it in place, and then eventually position the seat and the base here onto the floor so that it sits right. And I'm assuming that the shelving behind them is not going to interfere with me getting everything into place. So I'll probably put that shelving into place first on the wall before I plan on gluing the base down, the base and the chair down onto the floor. So when I come back, I'll show you what I'm planning on doing for painting the model. Hey guys, so I have primed all the parts gray, and I use a gray primer for a reason, and that's to identify any seam lines that still need to be done. I prefer not to apply paint directly to a model kit without priming it. Priming is for me, it's very important because of those seam lines. So this is what she looks like now um, with the seam lines addressed. And there were a lot of seam lines that I thought I had addressed, but were still showing through, especially on the top of the surgical gown and along the sides and on the bottom. So once I addressed those seam lines, I then applied another coat of primer just to make doubly sure that they were addressed. And it looked to me like they're gone now. Now I'm working on the bench. And again, just eyeballing it before I had primed it, it looked pretty good. I thought the seam lines were all addressed, especially in the top area of the bench. Um, but the gray primer showed that, in fact, I was wrong. Um, so what I do is I'll use the perfect plastic putty to address seam lines before I prime it, as well as now that I primed it a second time, just to get rid of these seam lines. So it's been my experience, usually two passes, one pass of addressing the seam, then priming it, and then a second pass to address the final seam lines. And then I'll prime it one more time just to make sure that they're gone. And usually it's after that second pass, I'm pretty satisfied that the seam lines have been addressed. And, the gray really shows, the issue coming up. So now, once that's all done, I'm then going to start painting everything. For the bench, I'm going to start off painting the wood a mahogany brown color. And then for the top part of the bench, the cushion area, I'm going to use this black red. And that's really for the shadowing within the cushion. And then I'm thinking of dry brushing this dark red on top. I'm going to need to dry brush down here as well. I haven't decided on the brown color for the wood yet, but the mahogany is going to be the undercoat for sure. So when we come back, I'll show you the progress I'm making on the different parts. So this is an update on where I stand on the bench, the platform, and the floor. So with the bench, I originally started off painting it, the wood anyways, mahogany brown, and I just didn't like that color. It didn't feel right for this particular piece of furniture. Felt like it should be a slightly different color. It was just too, I don't know, just too flat brown for me. So I took a look at the Amazing Figure Modeler booklet, and there was a suggestion in there that this author had used, which was to paint it or to use a transparent brown and then add a little tint of transparent red to the color, to the paint. And that's what I ended up doing. I don't know, it was seemed to be I would say 95% brown and maybe 5% red, if it was even that. Maybe it was even closer to 98% brown and 2% red. But I just added a few drops of red to the brown and then proceeded to paint that. And what I was after was getting like a mahogany, a red mahogany brown color. And I think I achieved that with this. And it feels about right for this piece of furniture. Now for the cushion, what I ended up using was a combination. So I laid down first the black red, so that would be in the recess areas on the cushion, and then I dry brushed the dark red onto the cushion surface. And the idea being is that the black red would add some depth to this cushion. Keep in mind that the figures are going to be sitting on here, and really, you're not going to see what's going on behind the figures per se. It's more like what you're going to see on the sides here. And I think I achieved what I was after. And then finally, I locked in the colors with the Vallejo satin varnish. I didn't want this to be too glossy, so the satin varnish, I think, really gives that idea of a semi-gloss appearance for the furniture. So that took care of the bench. Now moving on to the platform. First I laid down some this wood color onto the platform, and then I cut my own masks. I had some masking material that I just literally just took a look at the furniture that I have in place and the wood grain that's in the on the furniture, and just made my own mask, freestyled it, you know, um, and then laid that down. And then I did a combination of colors. I did the burnt umber and wood color, mixed that together for the wood grain appearance. And then I used this wash for wood from AK Interactive and applied that as well. And this is what it looks like. To be honest, you really don't see much of the bench in the movie, so it was hard to tell if it was had any wood grain or not. I sort of envisioned this being like a plywood base that they slapped together in the movie. So that's the approach I was taking with this. And then finally, the floor. I did it very close to what's in that booklet, but some differences. So for the wood itself, it was a combination of using this wood color for the lighter areas on here, and then for the in between, sort of like a gray color, I ended up using the medium gray and wood color. I just mixed those two together and then applied that as a base coat with that wood color in between. and I did it on the front as well as the sides too. And then once that was dry, I then applied the AK Interactive wood color on top of that to make it look a little bit on the age side. And then for each of the in between of the each of the panels on here, or the floor boards, I end up using the panel line accent color, the black color, and just apply that so that they just stood out a little bit. And then these nail heads. Um, those nail heads are going to really just show up on the sides and a little bit on the front. So I just went with steel and just painted the nail heads. Unfortunately, you're not going to see much because once you lay the platform down, I think the platform goes like right about here. You're only going to see the nail heads in the front and on the side. You're not going to see them underneath. But just for completeness, I applied the paint to the nail heads anyways. Just kept it like it is. That way it looks, I guess, semi realistic. So that's where we stand right now for the base. So the next step I'm going to work on is the wall, as well as the wood shelves that go on the wall. Paint those up, and then that will take care of the base before I could start going on to the figures. So back in a little bit and show you the progress I'm making on the rest of the base. So I've been working on the wall, and at this stage, I haven't finished the wall just yet, but I just want to go over what I did. So for the mortar in between the stones, I airbrushed this neutral gray. And I airbrushed it for a reason, because I wanted some of that neutral gray to get onto the stones as well. I could have used a brush and just went between each of these, but it felt like if I did that, it wouldn't be as natural looking. Because I wanted these stones to appear to be like there's a little bit of shading going on within this wall. So the neutral gray was just airbrushed on to sort of give that effect. And I think I achieved that. And then for each of the stones, I used different colors of browns and grays. True, I could have painted the whole wall just a single color gray, but I just wanted to make it look more like a castle wall that you might see. So, for example, this brown color and that brown color is a flat earth. And for dark colors like here and up here, I use the dark gray. And then for some of these other colors like here and here, I use this medium gray. And then I also use for the lighter gray, this medium sea gray 2. And then for the bright browns, I use this light brown color. And again, I just wanted to make it all random looking so that when I apply my dry brushing on here, it actually look like more like a stone wall. So I think I'd achieved that effect so far. So the other thing that I did was address the shelving. Now this isn't done yet, but what I did was I used a combination of sepia shade, so that's this wash color, and I mixed that with a couple of drops of the burnt umber. And I wanted to get sort of a darkish brown. And once that was all dry, I flat coated it, and then I applied this AK Interactive wash for wood on top, and just made it a little bit darker. So it's now a darker brown. I think that's closer to what you would expect to see in the movie. Now, the other thing I'm thinking of doing, and I haven't quite made up my mind yet, is I might apply a dust effect on top of the shelves. The reason being is I'm sort of thinking like the shelves have been hanging around in the laboratory for a while and they're collecting some dust. Now, the various clear parts are going to be on these two shelves. So So I'm not too sure exactly how much of a dust effect I'm going to apply, but it's definitely going to be a little dusty, I think, or it should be. And that's only going to be on the top. Obviously, we won't be doing it on the underside. But I kind of like how this brown color for the shelf looks. It looks like wood on this wall right now. But I think a little bit of dust might improve the appearance on the top, anyways. So that's where we stand right now for the wall. So when I come back, I'll go over what I did for dry brushing onto the wall here, as well as whether I use the dust effect on the shelving. So this is take two on the platform. So something about the platform just didn't sit right with me. It seemed like it was too orangey in color, and the wood grain just stood out. So I mixed up some of this wood deck tan with a heavy amount of my thinner, and used it like as a wash and just airbrushed it on the surface. And what that did was it knocked down the wood grain pattern, and it also knocked down the orangey color. Once that was dry, I flat coated it and then applied this wood wash again on the top of it. And now it's a darker color, and it's not orangey like it was before. And I think it now fits in better with what's going on the diorama than it did before. At least I like it. So I'm going to let this dry. I just finished adding the wood wash onto it. I'm going to let this dry. And I usually find that give it a little bit of time to dry, it either gets darker over time, or it starts lightening up a little. Um, Funny as it may seem, it seems to go in either of those directions. Now, for the top of these shelving, I then applied the this dust on here and just weathered it on the top here. Really light coats, and I mean light. I watered it down and just applied it. And it may not show up in person. It looks like it's a little dusty. Um, and it's definitely a different color on the top here versus the rest of the shelf. This is the smaller one. What I didn't want was I didn't want the dust to be really bright, looking like I applied it as like a paint. Um, so I was sort of picturing in my head, well, on the set they set the shelves up. It was a little dusty in between getting takes, and a little bit of dust settled on it. But I didn't want it to be too dusty. And besides, all the glassware is going to be sitting on the top of these shelves anyway. So whatever dust effect I had, I really did want it to show through. But it's enough of a change in person. It may not show up on camera, but in person, it's enough of a change on the top here versus the rest of the shelf. It's a little bit lighter in color. So I thought that came out pretty good. So now that the deck has been addressed, I'm going to flat coat it once this is dry. I'll probably give it a day and let it dry. But I'm very, very happy now that it looks less like an orangey tiger. I think that's what the best description for it. And it looks more like the deck that fits in with the rest of the diorama. So next I'm going to start working on the figures, and I'll show you the progress I'm making on that. I have started work on the Frankenstein monster figure, and I started with the boots. So you'll notice that the boots are a brownish color. Um, so there are images online of the costume that Boris Karloff wore for the Bride of Frankenstein. And it's not the traditional black colors that you see with a Frankenstein monster. Usually the combination is black coat, black shirt, black pants, and then black boots. For the Frankenstein monster and the Bride of Frankenstein, The colors actually were brown boots. So these, I think they're called cement boots. Had a couple of different colors of brown. Um, then the coat, it looks like a German gray. The pants look like a dark gray, and then the shirt is a brown. So the colors I'm going to go with is German gray for the coat. For the pants, I'll go with a dark gray. And then I'm thinking that the NATO brown is pretty close to the color on the shirt. Now for the boots, what I did was I started off by base coating everything with a chocolate brown. And that's to give a nice dark color to the soles here, as well as the wrinkles in the boot. And then I dry brushed some beige brown on top of it, just to give it a different look. And then in between each of the lines on the boots, I use the panel line accent color, the black color, just to make it look a little different. This has already been flat coated, and it's good to go. Now I've started work on the monster himself. So what I've done is airbrushed color I generally use for the undercoating on skin, and that is a violet red. So the violet red, I think, really gives a good idea of, you know, what we have going on underneath our skin, which is, you know, red and blue colors. So that's going to be the starting position for the monster. Now, what I'm going to be doing is airbrushing some pale skin color on top of it. So I'm not going with the traditional green color for Frankenstein's monster. And the reason being is I'm not a big fan of that color, and I don't think that is really would represent what a person whose body parts were put together from different bodies and and sewn together and then electrified through lightning to be brought back to life. I don't think that's what the colors will look like. I really think it would be much more of a pale skin color, and that's the approach I'm going to be taking with this kit. Um, so I got the hands done as well. So when we come back, I'll show you the progress I'm making on painting the skin color. At this stage, I applied a pale flesh tone to the face, as well as the hands and arm region that's exposed. And what I tried to do was set it up so that it did not completely cover that violet red color. I wanted it to set up so that the violet red acted as a shadow. And so the pale flesh that's on top is sort of having it shadowed on his face and his hands, his arms. So once that was done, I then applied some freckles to the face and the hands and arms using this Vallejo Game Color skin color. And I did a really light sort of flicks with my airbrush on there because I didn't want the freckles to be too big. After all, this is a 1/8 scale character. So if the freckles are too big, they'll look out of place on the face and the hands. So I needed to be really fine. So I made sure that it was as fine as possible. Once that settled in, I then applied a lighter mist of the pale flesh color over it so that toned back the freckles a little. I sealed that in. And then what I did, once it was dry, I then used a blue wash. Now I make my own blue wash, and really it's simple. It's just I take this craft blue paint and just take a little dab of it, um, and then just add my paint thinner to it, and it makes a really really nice dark blue, and I mean a little bit. It's hardly a scoop. It was more like just a little bit on this tool here, and made it really dark. So so I've just finished adding the blue wash to the face, and when you add it, you especially with the blue wash, it sets up really quickly. So the key here is to remove it with a damp sponge. So this is a makeup sponge. I think I cut this in half a long while ago, and I just use it over and over again. And you just dab to remove it. You don't want to, you know, to go to rub it on there. So you want to dab it and remove it. And what it ends up doing is it sets up the skin, I think, into a much more realistic colored um, bluish tone to it. But we're not done yet. I'm letting this dry right now, and I'm going to give it a good, um, about a half an hour or so of drying to make sure it settles in and it's dry. And then I'm going to seal it. And the next step is applying a yellow wash to the face, the hands, and the arm region. And once that's dry, I'll seal it in, and then I'll use the red um, wash as well, just to set up the skin. And at that point, the major work has been done with the face and the hands and arms, and then it's really filling in all the details. So that includes, like, for example, adding some of the other colors to the skin. We have a burned region on the side of his face. We got cuts in the forehead. The arms have similar cuts. So all that stuff is all the detail work that needs to be done. But the major work to the skin will be done once I seal it in with the yellow and red wash in place. And he's starting to look, I think at least in person, my opinion, he's starting to look like a monster, which I'm very happy about. All right, so when we come back, I'll show you the progress I'm making on his face, then his hands and arms. Okay, guys, I'm back with another update. So when I left off, I had applied a blue wash onto the skin. I flat coated that. Then I applied a yellow wash using this yellow, primary yellow. And then flat coated that, and then applied a cadmium red wash onto the skin and flat coated that. Once that was set, I then used pastels on to the face and the hands. And the reason why I went with pastels is a lot easier to control, I think, than trying to brush it on. Also allows me to do some feathering so that we don't have like a stark area where the color started in one place and ends in another. So I was able to do a lot of feathering. So for example, on the forehead as well as the neck area, I use this red pastel, what is it called, violet shade. And I thought that was a pretty good color. It's not too, I guess once you apply it, it's not too bright red. And the nice thing about the pastels is I can take it off using a Q-tip. Now around the eyes and the face, or the mouth, I end up using this dark ultramarine blue color. And I did the same thing on his hands. So where these veins are popping up on his hands, I used the dark ultramarine. Where there's a wound area, like it looks like there's scar tissue going on here, I use that violet red color. And the same thing's true here too. Now his fingernails, at first I was going to do black. Then I read the write-up on this, and the author had used a gray color, a dark gray color. So I ended up going with the German gray for his fingernails. I didn't want it to be black, but I wanted it to be a really dark gray, and I think I achieved that. Now for his eyes, I ended up using this white gray. And then knowing Boris Karloff's eyes were brown, I ended up going with a chestnut brown color too. This one right here. Now for his hair, I didn't want it to be totally black. Uh, Boris Karloff, at this stage in life, had brown hair. So I'm thinking that they probably had the makeup artist, Jack Pierce, had probably used, especially in the back area, his natural hair. They might have applied some sort of hair coloring, but I have no way of knowing. Um, so what I did was I laid down a black foundation first, and then I dry brushed the chestnut brown on top, and then I applied a black wash on top. And it looks to me like it's not black, which is what I was after, and it's also not brown, sort of in between. It looks natural. Um, Now, for everything that's metal, like the bolts on his neck, um, these staples on his forehead, and then I'm not too sure what this uh, thing is on his hand, uh, I was kind of caught in between of using either chrome or silver. And I ended up going with this folk art sterling silver instead because I like the color of the sterling silver. It's not too shiny like a chrome would be, but it's also not on the duller side like a silver would be. So it just felt right, anyways. So now that I got the skin done and his hands are done, so I can set that aside. I'm going to mask up the face and then start painting his suit. So, like I said, the shirt is going to be a NATO brown color, and then the coat is going to be the German gray color, and then I think the pants are going to be a dark gray color. Um, when you watch the movie, there's also other things going on that I've not, and I might have mentioned it earlier. Um, his clothes are torn, so I'm not going to be doing that. However, there's a lot of weathering going on his coat, his shirt, his pants, and I'm going to eventually do the weathering once that's all sealed up. But I also want to get the bride done first before I start applying the weathering. So I think for Frank, the Frankenstein model, I keep on calling him Frank. Uh, I think for Frank, once I get the basic colors down for the clothes, I'll do the weathering later on. Once I want to get the bride out of the way, and then see how the two look together before I start applying the weathering. So we come back. I'll show you the progress I'm making on him as well as the bride. Okay, guys, just to provide an update on where we stand with Frank. So I ended up going with the NATO brown for his shirt. So this is the color I used. However, I decided to go in a different direction for his suit. And I ended up going with the German Panzer Gray. I kind of like the contrasting colors. I painted originally gray, didn't really care for it. And then I thought about going the NATO black route, but I kind of like this color approach instead. Yes, I know it doesn't match the suit that was worn in the movie, the costume, but I kind of like this. I think this feels more like a Frankenstein, in my opinion, than something black. Now, for the shadowing on his pant legs and on the suit and shirt, I end up using a black pastel just to add a little bit of shadowing everywhere. So I dressed it in the back as well. I'm kind of glad that it's not overpowering. It's nice. It feels like it's the proper type of shadowing. So at this point, Frank is nearly done. I still need to do some weathering on his suit, um, but I'm going to hold off for now. I'm just going to let that sit for now as I take a look at it and think about the next steps for what I want to do with his suit. I have not started on the bride just yet, but I wanted to work on the sign. So I painted the sign black, and the lettering is white. And really, to get it so that I'm not putting white in the areas I don't want it, I end up dry brushing the white on here and then fixing it up in places where it needed to be a little cleaned up. What I want to do is paint the lettering very similar to what we see here. So you can see what they're doing is they start with white at the top, and then it's progressing into some yellow here, and then it's going into some orange down here. So I want to go in that direction. So I'm thinking the best approach will end up being using some clear yellow, followed by some clear orange. And I might end up using a little bit of clear red at the bottom. So that's why everything is white right now. And I may end up just airbrushing those colors on rather than trying to apply them with a brush. That way the transition will feel a little bit more natural, or very similar to what the box art has. Once that's done, then I'm going, just about everything is painted except for the bride. And obviously I haven't assembled the clear parts yet, but I'll get to that a little bit later on. So that's where we stand right now, guys. Okay, so I'll go over what I did up to this point to do her face. So it's pretty much similar to the Frankenstein monster. So I started off with a undertone of the violet red color. And then I used a pale flesh color. So I started off with the pale flesh for, above her, from her face down, sort of shadowing it. And then I used a semi-transparent pale flesh for underneath the neck and behind the, underneath the hair. Once that was dry, I then used my matte finish and locked that into place. And then I started applying my my washes. So I started off with a blue wash using this primary color. And then I did a yellow wash using this color, primary yellow. And then finally a cadmium red wash. Locked all that into place with a matte finish. And then the next step was to address her face. Started off with the mouth. It's going to be a combination of colors that I used. So I started off on the inside of the mouth with the succulus skin red color. It looked pretty close to a mouth color. And then for her teeth, I used a ivory white color. And then for her lips, I wanted to be a dark red color, so I ended up going with the black red. Same black red that I used on the seat or bench that they're sitting on. For her eyes, it was the white is going to be the white gray. And then I also used a little bit of the old rose for underneath the eyes. And then around the eyes, it was just a black paint color. And then for her hair, it's supposed to be an auburn hair that she has. So just doing a little bit of research on the web, the closest color is a red-brown. So I started off by doing red-brown on her hair. And then to get the white here, this white wavy part on her hair, I just used a flat white color. And then finally for her scarring along the along her jawline there, I just used a red pastel. It was easier to do that because we're not talking about very much discoloring going on there. And then for her eyes, I used some green eye decals, um, and tried to get it so that she's looking a little bit down, like towards her hand. Because when you see it in the picture, you can see that she's actually, her eyes are wide open, but she's actually looking down first before she starts her screaming. So at this point, her head is done. The rest of the body is probably going to be straightforward. I plan on using this titanium white color for her gown as well as her arms, and I might end up doing some sort of wash on her, on the wrappings on her two arms. But pretty much the titanium white should be the color that'll get pretty close to maybe what the costume looked like. Um, there's uh, some ties in the back here that's underneath my tape right now. I'm not too sure what color that might be, but if it's anything like a medical gown, I'll probably end up going with like a green or a blue color for that. And that will pretty much finish her up. Well, nearly finished. I still have to address the folds in her gown. I want to add a little bit of gray shadowing going on here, and I'll probably end up using my pastels for that. I'll use a gray pastel. I have much more control in getting it in there. It'll look a lot better that way. I did the same thing with the Frankenstein monster costume, but I use black pastels for the shadowing. So I kind of like how that came out, so I'll probably end up doing the same thing with her. So she is almost done. Maybe I should mention the only other thing I did was the sign. And this was pretty straightforward. Just paint it black, then paint the lettering white, and then just airbrushing an orange, a clear orange and yellow on the lettering. So I started with a light coat of yellow in the top here, and just making it darker as I went down. Because again, I just wanted to match the lettering that's on the box. So I don't know if I had mentioned this earlier, but this is what it looks like, and it came out pretty good, pretty close to what you see on the box art. So I'm pretty happy with that. So from what I can tell, once I get her finished, the only other thing I have to address are the clear parts, and I'll be done. Okay, guys, so since my last update, I've completed the model, so I'll go over the changes that I made to the kit. So we'll start with the bride first. So I used a gray pastel on the wrappings on her arms, and I wanted that to have her arms stand out from the rest of the body. Um, After thinking about it, I decided not to apply the pastels to the folds of the dress. I think the gray primer that I applied and the light coat of white that I applied to it has given sufficient natural shading to the folds. So there was no reason, in my mind anyways, to add additional pastels to the costume. Now, with the Frankenstein monster, I added both a a mud and a dirt effect. So what I used for the costume itself was AK Interactive's Dry Mud, as well as the Dark Earth color. And I used a brush just to dab it onto the costume in different areas. And then I used a wet Q-tip to take it off. Um, Now, when you watch the movie, you'll see that they did a little bit on the heavy side in terms of weathering on the costume, especially the backside of Boris Karloff's coat. It really looks like bird droppings and not, I guess, supposed to be mud or something like that. So I wanted to look weathered to fit really the theme of that movie, where you have Boris Karloff's Frankenstein monster surviving the castle that burned down around him, and he's escaping the villagers, and ultimately shows up at Dr. Frankenstein's castle for the bride. So I really wanted to give that idea of a weathered costume. And in fact, you can see it in the images that they provide with the instructions. Like this bottom left image right here, you can see some of the weathering that's gone on his pants and his coat. So even if you didn't see the movie, you get the idea of what's going on with Boris Karloff's character. Um, Unfortunately, they did not rip up the sleeves or the pant legs as it is in the actual costume. That would have been even better, and you could add additional weathering to the sleeves with that with those parts just torn off. But that's not what came with the kit. Now, in terms of the glassware, they provide way more than what you really need for the shelves. Um, in the movie itself, there isn't. They have glassware behind the two actors. Unfortunately, it's not that much. So when it comes to the glassware, I think other people who have assembled this model have said pretty much the same thing. It should have been these parts should have been molded together and not separate. Like for example, this beaker right here is a single piece beaker, and you don't see a line in it. Unfortunately, you can see the line where I assembled this bottle. So anything I had to assemble, I ended up painting, and I used Tamiya clear colors. So I used a blue, green, red, orange, and yellow clear, um, just to just to make the bottles look a little bit different. Now, for the top of the bottles, uh, you're going to need to use a black primer color, and then apply whatever color you want for the top of the bottle. In my case, I use the silver color for the caps. There's a couple of these bottles. This one right here, for example, it looked like it was a cork um, insert in the top of the bottle, so I ended up painting that a brown color. So overall, this is a fun model to build, and I do recommend, if you haven't built it, to get onto Cult Man TV Shop and order the aftermarket heads. I think they make a huge difference in terms of this model diorama. The heads that come with the model kit, you're going to have lines running through it unless you're really good at removing those lines. You'll have lines running through it. Also, you need to have the two actors looking at each other. Um, and unfortunately, the way that the model is set up, they would not be looking at each other. In the case of Elsa, she's going to be looking away from the Frankenstein monster. And when you see the scene, she's actually looking at him before she starts screaming. So I think what this scene is representing is that particular part of the film where she's about ready, where he's taking her hand, calling her a friend, and then she starts screaming her head off. The other thing you'll need to consider when you assemble this is her right arm. And the model kit is having it too far away from the body. I kind of like the fact I was able to move it closer to her body. In the film, her right arm, her right hand is actually on her right hip. But I didn't want to get that close because I knew I'd end up having to do something with the wrapping. The other point I want to make with this is when I assembled the Frankenstein monster, I glued his left hand into his arm, but I did not glue the right hand into the arm. And also, I didn't glue the boots. So the boots fit right in really tight. You don't need to glue it. Certainly, you can glue it if you want to keep it in place, but there's no reason to. With the right hand, I did not glue that in place because I wanted to be able to move the figure out from the diorama. Um, and so having the right hand adjustable makes it a lot easier. So it's just pressed right into place. I don't need to glue it in place. It's not going anywhere. And more importantly, allows me to adjust that hand on top of her hand. So I get closer to what you see in the movie. Her hand right now is resting almost on top of his left hand. So that really worked out well. So yeah, this is the Bride of Frankenstein model is fun. It's a fun build. I recommend putting together if you haven't done so. So until next time, guys, stay safe and join me in my next modeling adventure.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.